Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com. CNN says that Greenland is melting and it's going to flood West Virginia in a foot of water. And they also say Greenland's ice is melting far faster than previously thought, study shows. USA Today reports Greenland ice sheet melting too fast, raising sea levels, experts say. And they say it's getting hotter in Greenland. This is the propaganda which the public is hearing. Now let's look at the actual data. This graph shows the Greenland ice sheet's surface mass balance for the past 6 years, with the data coming from the Danish Meteorological Institute. The surface mass balance is the difference between the amount of snow which is accumulating and the amount of melt off the surface. Between the beginning of September and the end of May, a lot of snow accumulates on the surface of Greenland. And then during June and July, some of that snow melts. On average, over the course of 12 months, the surface of the Greenland ice sheet gains about 370 billion tons of mass. The excess ice which accumulates every year forms the glaciers which then flow down into the sea. For 4 of the last 6 years, including this year, the amount of snow and ice accumulating on Greenland's surface has been above average. The only year which was significantly below average was 2019. In other words, over the last 6 years, Greenland has been gaining ice, not losing it. The blue line in this graph shows the daily surface mass balance of Greenland over the past 12 months. Since the beginning of June, the surface mass balance has been above average almost every single day. This means that there was less snow and ice lost off of Greenland's surface this summer than the long-term average. And the really interesting thing is that the excess accumulation of snow and ice occurred at the lower elevations of Greenland, where experts claim the ice is melting. Over the last 10 years, northern Greenland's most famous glacier, the Petermann Glacier, has gained a large amount of length. The glacier now extends about 10 kilometers further than it did in August of 2012. Greenland's other famous glacier, the Jakobshavn Glacier, has been growing for several years in a row. But from 1850 to about 1950, that same glacier retreated very rapidly. Prior to 1950, the glacier was retreating very rapidly, but now the glacier is growing. In 1939, it was reported by scientists that all the glaciers in eastern Greenland were rapidly melting. December 11, 1939, it may without exaggeration be said that the glaciers, like those in Norway, face the possibility of a catastrophic collapse. But those glaciers aren't melting anymore, and now the surface of Greenland is gaining unusually large amounts of ice. So let's look at the fake news from USA Today once again. Greenland ice sheet melting too fast, raising sea levels, experts say. And now let's look at some fake news from the government of Massachusetts. Sea level rise resulting from the melting of Arctic ice appears to be accelerating. Sea levels rose about 9 inches during the 20th century. By 2030, sea level is projected to rise by 0.6 to 1.1 feet above 2000 levels. By 2070, some projections estimate a rise in sea level of 2.3 to 4.2 feet over 2000 levels. Sea level rise combined with more intense hurricanes and winter storms present a serious threat to people residing in coastal areas of Massachusetts. Let's take a look now at the actual data for Massachusetts, and in particular the keywords some projections. The tide gauge at Boston shows sea level is rising at the same rate now as it was 100 years ago. And in fact, the sea level rise rate is actually lower now than it was in 1950. This graph from NOAA shows all of the projected sea level rise rates for Boston. This is the high projection, the intermediate high projection, the intermediate projection, the intermediate low projection, and the low projection. Observed sea level is the dashed line. As you can see, it's below all of the projections, even their lowest projection. The government of Massachusetts used the term some projections estimate, but the projections they're referring to have been shown to be completely worthless by actual data. We've seen the fake news about Greenland melting and the fake news about sea level rise. Now let's look at the fake news about hurricanes. During the 20th century, Massachusetts has been experiencing the longest period on record without a severe storm. Tropical cyclones in Massachusetts peaked during the 1950s and are way down now. New England has not been hit by a major hurricane since 1954. But during 1954, Massachusetts was hit by two major hurricanes within 2 weeks, Carol and Edna. The second of those major hurricanes, Edna, passed right over Martha's Vineyard. That's where Barack Obama recently purchased a beach home that's worth almost $20 million. It would appear that Barack Obama is not worried about either sea level rise or major hurricanes. His home was right in the path of Hurricane Edna in 1954. If he believed that sea level rise was accelerating or that hurricanes were getting worse, he would not have purchased this home. But there is something which Barack Obama does appear to be worried about. He wants to put a 2,500-gallon commercial propane tank on the property. He's not trying to power his mansion off of wind and solar, he's using fossil fuels. Barack Obama is making a wise decision purchasing that much fuel because energy prices are skyrocketing under the administration of Joe Biden. And that's exactly what Barack Obama said he was going to do 14 years ago.
Under my plan of a cap and trade system, electricity rates would necessarily skyrocket. Even, regardless of what I say about whether coal is good or bad, because I'm capping greenhouse gases, coal-powered plants, natural gas, you name it, whatever the plants were, whatever the industry was, they would have to retrofit their operations. That will cost money. They will pass that money on to consumers. So if somebody wants to build a coal-powered plant, they can. It's just that it will bankrupt them because they're going to be charged a huge sum for all that greenhouse gas that's being emitted.
All this fake news never had anything to do with climate, sea level, Greenland, or the Arctic. It was always about making energy prices skyrocket, and they've succeeded. The easiest way to immobilize the peasantry is to make it unaffordable for them to travel. The World Economic Forum has been quite open about the fact that while they fly around in their private jets, they want the peasantry locked up in their homes. I'm going to finish this up with one last projection from the U.S. government. NOAA predicts above normal 2022 Atlantic hurricane season. And so far it's been the quietest season on record with no hurricanes in the Atlantic at all. 6 years ago, the Washington Post was terrified by the record lack of hurricanes hitting the United States. The United States had gone for more than 10 years without a major hurricane strike. But hurricane seasons weren't always like this. Let's go back to the year 1954, the last time New England was hit by a major hurricane. Carol and Edna made landfall less than 2 weeks apart, but the third major hurricane of that season was the most destructive. Hurricane Hazel ravaged the East Coast before it went up to Canada and became their deadliest hurricane on record. More than 100 people died in Toronto from Hurricane Hazel. Hurricanes are not getting worse, sea level rise is not getting worse, Greenland is not melting down. But people are making lots of money by fear-mongering about the climate. Toto has been pulling back the curtain on this massive propaganda campaign for the past 14 years. You can visit him, Kyrie Caesar, Toki and Upala on the web at realclimatescience.com.